Welcome, everyone. I am Zach Forrest, and here with me today is Mr. Stu Brauer from the Jim Real Estate Company. Having difficulty speaking today, geez. Today, we're going to dive into what it really takes to not only expand to multiple locations, but actually you can take these principles and as I was just talking with Stu, and apply it to anytime you just want to start up a brick and mortar location. From funding strategies to cost analysis and breakdown, we're going to go over some common mistakes, right, Stu?
Yes, we are.
Make. Yep. That can either make or break your growth. We're here to help you plan and scale and avoid all those pitfalls. So let's just jump right into it. Stu, take it away.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's go. Let's have some fun here. Let me get the slideshow prezo mode. Okay, check it. Let me minimize this. All right. So we'll be talking about cost analysis and financing your next location. The conversation for today is going to apply for whether you're looking to lease or purchase. There will be areas that are going to be specifically for purchase and maybe specifically for lease, and I will go ahead and specify. In the chat right now, do the hand raise thing or whatever you need to do. Is anyone in here thinking while they're going to have a cash flowing small business, they want to leverage like an SBA loan to purchase commercial real estate? Is that anyone's interest in Zach? Because I can't see it when I'm in full screen mode. Let me know, what everybody's saying.
I don't see anybody just yet, but that is a pretty common scenario.
Cool. And again, I will pivot this for whatever the group here is wanting, but I'm just gonna make sure if you are ever interested in looking to purchase, or you're just like, hey, how do I better finance my next location? This is all going to be applicable. It's just good context for me to know. So when you're going to open a location, and you obviously and likely did not know this in your first one, there are all these costs and associated things that you don't really plan for. But when we get that first location, we're just kind of running through brick walls, not really knowing where they lead. This would be the more practical and what I would say is the more sophisticated way, now that you have a location, or if this is gonna be your first location, to approach this, okay? So I do what's called a true cost analysis. Now, all a true cost analysis is really having an understanding as to what are all the hidden shit I'm not thinking of that this thing's actually going to cost me. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this live. And you guys, if you want a copy of this, I will go more than happy to send you a read-only version that you can copy and paste into your own spreadsheet. But I'm going to literally just kind of walk you guys through this. When you are doing a true cost analysis, the first thing before you think about the location you want to open is the money you have, or the money you have the ability or opportunity to get. All right. So you think about your cash on hand. Let's say Zach, you want to do this as a startup, for location 1 or location 2 for somebody?
Let's do it as a startup, because I think applying it to location 2 will be easier.
Okay, so it's a startup, great. So let's say you're a startup and you've gone ahead and you've saved up and planned for this, and you're going to go ahead and you've got somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000. Maybe you've got an old 401k you're going to cash in, or whatever it may be. You've got $100,000 of cash on hand saved up for this project. Okay, we get into negotiation and we find a site, and the landlord has committed $150,000 in TI, tenant improvement. If you've been on our previous webinar, tenant improvement is essentially leasehold improvements, which means drywall, offices, flooring, lighting, plumbing, bathrooms, storage closets. TI, tenant improvement allowance, has nothing to do with your equipment. It does not count towards your flooring. You can't use it to buy a big ass fan. You can't use it to paint a mural on the wall or put a sign out on the front. It's only improvements and changes and modifications to the property that are needed to open up the business. So, but let's say they've provided you with $150,000. Okay. Now you can go and get a loan. Now, a traditional bank loan, right? Just going to the bank is going to be difficult. I'm going to talk about traditional bank loans in a little bit, but if you're a startup, it's going to be hard, because no offense, you're a small business owner. You are statistically more likely to fail than not. That's just the numbers. So let's say you went a smarter route, which is what I'd recommend, and you went with an SBA loan. For everyone that thinks about the SBA does not loan money. Banks are the only ones that loan money. Okay. There are other groups called what we call CDCs, Certified Development Companies. They also loan money, in which the SBA, a government entity, guarantees the money, guarantees they will get paid back. They are essentially guaranteeing your note. Okay. I recommend SBA loans for startups. There are plenty of them that you can get. There's all different kinds of SBA loans depending on the lender, but you can get them as a startup, even if you have 0 locations. What you will need to have a significantly decent personal credit, okay? Because there's no business, right? There's nothing to go off of but your own personal credit. You will need an investor or a partner, someone who maybe brings some industry experience or cash. And there's various things they're looking for. But if you're ever like someone like, man, I want to use an SBA loan for my first location or future locations, well, future locations are easy because you have a existing business that allows the SBA to feel comfortable if it's profitable and successful. But if you have a startup location, it's going to be based on your credit, maybe your partner's credit. If your wife is co-signing with you, or your father-in-law is going to co-sign on you, that's what we're looking for. But that's generally what we're thinking here for startups, our SBA loans, generally what we call a 7A. And there's different versions of a 7A loan that we'll talk about. But let's say with the SBA loan, they're going to go in and give you 350. Okay. You're not doing a private loan. No, let's do a private loan. Let's say you went to your dad and your dad's like, dude, I'm good for 45. Okay. And construction loan, you're not going to need a construction loan because the GC is giving you the TI. You have credit cards and business credit cards, and you went and got a business line of credit for maybe 20 grand. Equipment financing, if you're smart, you're not buying all the equipment in cash. You would finance it in the beginning and then pay it off later. So, equipment financing could be using a credit card or using a company like Rig Equipment Financing or one of those other ones. But let's say, you plan to finance, 50% of your equipment. So let's call that like 65,000. Okay. And then you have, if there was some source of alternative funding, crowdfunding, this is like where people go on like, whatever, I'm trying to think of the names of the crowdfunding sites, but like I've seen gyms do that. Or alternative funding is like, I'm going to sell 50, 10-year memberships or unlimited memberships for lifetime for a certain dollar amount, right? That's maybe a version of crowdfunding type. But let's say this was your total available funding for the project. You always start with the amount of cash you have. Then we need to make our way to what things are going to cost. And I'm not going to play the game of throwing all the numbers in necessarily, but I want to just go through the list because these are the things that, like, if I were to ask someone planning their facility, I would ask, cool, so what do you think the anticipated costs are? They give me like 6 things. Well, rent and equipment and utilities and insurance and my membership subscription, like my SaaS products and my push product, there's a lot that you got to think of, especially as it relates to the site. So these are site specific costs. So you'll have a security deposit. Your security deposit as a concept will at a minimum be 1 month's rent, likely up to 3, because they don't know you and your idea has a statistical likelihood of failure. Okay. Prepaid rent. A lot of times with a concept, the landlord will say, listen, I'm taking a risk on you and I'm willing to do it, but I want you to prepay on this 5-year lease, month 58, 59, and 60 upfront. So whatever the rent will be in month 58, 59, and 60, the last 3 months of a 5-year lease, you're paying to me upfront. Meaning when those months come, assuming you're still in business, they're already paid. But now I have your skin in the game because if you fail, at least I get to keep that money. Okay. So that is something you may have an upfront cost. I generally like to see on a startup is you have 1 year's worth of the lease in cash on hand. Now that is ideal. Most of my startups that we do, and it's the majority of what we work with on the business consulting side and on the real estate side, we don't have that. We'll have 3 to 6 months stocked away. On some occasions, like 10 to 15%, we'll have enough financing for that. But it is a beautiful thing for you to know, I've got a year's worth of runway. Let's make shit happen. Okay. Architects. There is rarely a site that you're going to move into that is move-in ready for a gym. Okay. Very few and far between. It could happen, but otherwise there will have to be changes. And in order for there to be changes to be made, you just can't go in there with a hammer and a bunch of buddies and a 6-pack of beer and make the changes yourself and knock down walls. An architect has to come in and draw to the city's building codes, energy codes, safety, what we call life safety codes, ADA codes. They have to draw what this is going to look like, where the equipment's going to be, at least general idea, where the exits are, the points of egress, the offices, the bathrooms, ADA. Could a wheelchair do a 180 in the bathroom, okay, or I'm sorry, 360. Architects are generally $3,000 to $4,000 at the least. Then you'll have your general contractor. He will be whatever your construction cost is plus 20%. You'll have MEP engineers. If you have to get more tonnage, I've had people like, Stu, don't worry about it. The warehouse has HVAC. I'm like, yeah, buddy, but that HVAC was for a storage facility for plumbing equipment. Do you know what the requirement is for HVAC to heat and cool storage materials like plumbing equipment? It's 1 ton of HVAC per 500 square feet. Do you know what it is when you have human beings, what we call assembly use in your warehouse? It's 1 per 250 square feet. So the 10-ton unit HVAC is only 50% strong enough. And the MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, are going to be the ones to really shit in your Wheaties that day and say, yeah, but you need to double the HVAC size because you're going to have X amount of people in here. And the current unit wasn't cooling and heating that many people. So we need to get twice as much HVAC. And as you can imagine, commercial HVAC is not cheap. Maybe the landlord pays for it, maybe he doesn't. But it's something you need to think about. Environmental survey, if you're buying the building, you need to do an environmental survey, generally about $3,000 to $4,000. A civil engineer, if you're having to rezone the property, okay, which you never ever rezone a property if you're leasing it. You only do that if you're buying the building, but that could be 10 to 20 grand. Rezoning costs generally around 30 grand. And that's only if you're buying the building. And then streetscape and arborist, this is generally when you're buying the building and all this stuff had to happen. You generally have to change the streetscape of the property, depending on what municipality you're in, meaning adjust the sidewalks. A lot of like, you have those really small little sidewalks and the city wants you to put in the pedestrian ones. Or, you know, they want you to beautify the landscaping and it's a requirement of that municipality. So there's an insane amount of cost that could come with the site, especially if you're buying it. All right. Now there's business specific costs. And you guys, this is easy, right? Flooring, equipment, signage, front desk, the mural on the wall, the cool LED lights you want, whatever you need for the business that you want to have, that's here. And then there's the startup cost, right? I generally recommend for your pre-sale marketing, for most gyms, we generally land on $10,000 that you're going to spend over the course of like 4-ish months. That's for ad spend, maintenance of a firm to run the ads, setting up offsite events, all of that. 10 grand for about 4 months of pre-sale. And then I generally recommend having a minimum of 6 months of payroll in the bank. Okay. This is a true cost analysis. And then you'd run all that and then compared to all those costs, if I would have plugged in those numbers, and we'd see, do I have enough money to do this? And that's like the first come to Jesus moment when you are opening a facility, whether it's your first one or second one. Because I will tell you this, the number one reason commercial real estate projects stall and fail, meaning they don't move forward, is because somebody did not adequately think through how much will this cost and do I have enough? They were just kind of hoping to, like, on a wing and a prayer, they're going to make it. I have been called into projects where it is the most tragic. I can't help at that point. The project costs this much. They only have this much money. Why did you sign the lease if you didn't know what the true project cost was? Like, well, I thought we could. You don't think on spreadsheets, you know. So start with spreadsheets, guys. All right. If there's any questions on true cost analysis, fire them through and Zach will go ahead and hit me with it. Otherwise, I'm going to go into financing. Okay.
So there are no questions, but Heather did mention she got hit with 2 trees and 4 bushes. That's what the city beautification codes required. And I'm assuming by the way that you typed that in there, Heather, that was a surprise to you. If I go back and look at everything that Stu laid out, one of the things that jumps out at me is that there are so many more line items that business owners never even talk about, or I mean, maybe it's because they don't realize that are going to add to their bottom line costs when looking at a project, right, Stu? Where's the best place to learn about these things? Like if I want to know what is the potential for costs to arise without having to go through and make these mistakes?
Sure. So when you're looking at a site, and we talked about in the last webinar, if you guys go back and check out that recording, you look at a site and you walk through it the first time, you and your team or whoever your decision makers are. If you're like, this place, I think this is going to work. And let's say you're working with the gym real estate company, you let me know. And then we start thinking about the LOI, that lease that we want to put together, or the purchase offer for buying the building, comma, you are then rewalking the site with the architect and the GC. Now people say, but Stu, like you said, that architect's going to cost money. It sure as hell will. But what if I have the architect do drawings of this location and something happens in lease negotiation, we don't get it? That's the cost of doing business properly. You could
So
not get the architect.
yeah, you're mitigating your risk by paying that extra cost.
Correct. And when you go in, like when I said 3 to 4 grand, that's gonna be for a full set of drawings. You could, like when you're just preliminary looking at a site, you can have an architect just do a prelim drawing, a quick one with, kind of the big red flags, if anything. And, you're probably talking a grand. Okay. And then when you bring him in to create the full blueprints for the GC to go off of and to get stamped and send to the city for inspections and all that, that's when you're getting to like that $4,000 or more marker. Okay. Yep. But that's generally where, guys, you're not like everyone, people ask us like, hey, so did you see anything in the building that you thought was like, you don't like, sure, there's X, Y, or Z. I'm not the guy to do it, right? You want the architect to look because he's the only one who's going to know, hey, that wood, that's pressure treated cedar. And it's only 3/4 of an inch thick. And I know exactly that in 1987, they changed the building code that said blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, fuck, they got to change all the stud work because I'm rezoning the property. Like it's stuff like that like you need those subject matter experts to put their eyes on. You and your dad, because he does plumbing, are not going to be able to do it.
So best suggestion would be walking the space with a GC and then
architect,
and they're gonna be able to clue you in on those
all the big expenses. Here's a great example. Again, one that nobody would know. I had a client go in, they walked the site, they said it was great. And I said, hold on a second. We looked at the previous use of the site. It was a storage facility. So they had a couple offices in the front. They had a total occupancy of 30. When my client takes over the site, we're gonna have an occupancy of 250. My guess was that building, because it was built for that specific purpose of the storage, the pipes that go out to the line to the city aren't big enough. You got 30 people using the bathrooms. You only need something this big. You have up to 250 people using the bathrooms and putting waste through those pipes. They need to be bigger. And that's exactly what it was. The city came in once they had the MEP engineers, because the GC and the architect identified it first, along with us. And then we brought in MEP engineers, and the MEP engineers confirmed you have a 1.5 inch pipeline running to the sewer system that will not be big enough with your new occupancy. That's going to need to go up to 1 3/4 or 2 inches, whatever the hell it was. Guess how much that cost? $95,000.
Yeah, that's going to be insane. Yeah.
And so in that case, we considered walking away from the project, but we were able to get the landlord, because he wanted the long-term tenant, to take close to the 1-to-1 $95,000 off the first year's worth of rent. So that's how we were able to justify the cost. But that's why, again, it's like you need people to help you negotiate this and people to tell you what's going on with the site so we know what to negotiate. All right. So financing a new location. Again, guys, Zach and I grew up in a beautiful time of the group fitness gym, or fitness in general, where previously Gold's Gym and large boxes ran the show. And like a small business owner with a hope and a dream and a little couple pennies couldn't actually just open up. CrossFit changed that. The 2008 financial crisis changed that. People were able to start leasing warehouses and get a year free and all this other stuff. We were able to get started in a way that, I will be honest with you, I don't think anyone else can get started today. I had $600 and a pickup truck worth of equipment, and I was able to get a almost 2,000 square foot lease for nothing. And that allowed me to grow that company into something very big. That isn't happening anymore. So you're going to need money to start businesses. Okay. Assuming it's not an online business, you want brick and mortar, you need cash. A lack of capitalization is the #1 reason you fail. Not because you're not good at business, because you didn't have the money to deploy it to the things that are needed to make the money. So if you're going to be spending money, taking out HELOCs on your house, or you have a line of credit, or you're going to have a savings, or you're turning in a 401k, or you're getting a loan, a 7A loan or an express loan through the SBA, whatever it is, you need money to come play. And I'll be honest with you, you will not even get a chance to apply for the lease if they don't see you have the finances. No landlord or listing agent in a 2025 world is wasting their time with a prospective tenant that can't afford it. And whether you can afford it or not is not like, give us your business plan and tell us how passionate you are. It's show us the zeros that you have access to. It's very simple. So when we're looking at financing, again, I highly recommend the SBA. As someone who has taken out SBA loans for my business operations, to buy buildings, and with clients to purchase property, to expand and lease properties, to have operating capital for new, additional services they're going to start offering. The SBA, I believe, is really good to work with, and they're the most supportive of you, because that's the whole reason for the government entity to exist, is to support small businesses, because they make our economy keep chugging along. When you go there, if you go and talk to your local bank, you're going to want to say, hey, do we have an SBA officer here? If they say no, they might be able to patch you in with one at another branch, but you're going to want to go to a bank that has an SBA arm. You also do not have to use local banks. There's banks that I have clients use, and they're not even in the same state. So again, you do not have to be locally there. It is nice to have that local connection, though. But when you show up and you go to talk to an SBA loan officer, show up with this stuff ahead of time. They will take you far more serious in every email you send. If you're like, hey, my name's Stu and I got a gym, or I want to have a gym, and I want to know if you'll give me any money that make my dreams happen. Say like, hey, my name's Stu. I'm thinking of applying for an SBA loan for you. To save you time, I've attached a personal financial statement. All right, PFS. All right, just Google SBA PFS. There's a standard form. It just shows the assets, the things you own, liabilities, the things you owe on, and it shows your net worth. Okay. Here's my last 3 personal years of tax statements. Okay. Tax returns. And then if you have a projected pro forma, right? So pro formas are about projections. If you have an existing business, send them P&Ls of what has historically happened. Okay. But I recommend the SBA, and this is how, and this is like if you were buying the building, this is how this would work. I walk everybody through this on the buying part. You can do something similar if you wanted to with the lease. I don't really see the benefit for it. I've had some clients do it, but essentially, let's say we were buying a building. The bank and the SBA are going to loan money to a LLC, what we call a holding company. Okay. You're going to set up a separate LLC. That's going to be Stu's Real Estate Holding Company. Okay. That is going to be the company that just owns the building. Okay. You are then going to lease the building to your gym LLC, whatever it is, Stu's Fitness Orama. Okay. Now, from there, that holding company, okay, is what's going to actually get the money from the bank and the SBA, CDC. Okay. And there's going to be an exchange of money. All right. So the holding company, you are going to exchange money through what we call a PSA, purchase and sales agreement. So money gets exchanged. You give them monies. The seller gives you the building. Pretty simple. Now that holding company, again, you're still the owner of that. So you got 2 different hats on. So now you got building owner hat. You're going to sign a lease with different hat, gym owner. Okay. You are signing a lease with you. Your gym will pay rent payments to you, but to your holding company. These are 2 separate things. And I don't recommend any other version of this. Do not buy the building in your gym's LLC. Do not do it. Okay. Come down here. Now, when you look at how this is actually working, you've got this holding company and there is rent. Okay. So you're receiving rent from the gym. You subtract the operating expenses of owning the building, maintenance on the HVAC, maybe, landscaping or snow removal, maybe, property taxes, okay, building insurance. And whatever's left over is profit, okay? This is one of the biggest mistakes people make when they buy a building. If their mortgage is $9,000, they charge the gym themselves $9,000. That's ridiculous and incredibly immature. Your commercial real estate company is a business. It needs to show profit. And if you have an SBA loan, they will require you to have a profit. And if you don't, they can call the note. Does everyone know what calling a note is? Calling a note is when they call like, hey, listen, your commercial real estate company that we gave a big check to buy that building is barely profitable. Some months it's not. We want all our money back. We don't trust you anymore. That's what calling the note is. It is a legal thing that every loan that you get on commercial real estate, if you're borrowing money to buy a building, will have in it. I've never seen it done, but it is a possibility. Okay. I've never had a client that happened to, but that is something you will have in the loan docs that you get from the bank and the SBA. That if you are not keeping your head above water, okay, it's what we call debt service coverage ratio, DSCR. If you don't have enough coverage off that mortgage, they could say, listen, we don't trust you. Give us back the money. You're like, dude, I don't have the money. Cool. Well, then we're taking the building back. That's how that would go. So please, if your mortgage is 9, what I recommend is generally 30% more. That's what you charge yourself in rent at a minimum. Okay. Your gym. So your gym LLC, you take the revenue of the gym, obviously, you subtract your operating expense of the gym, that's profit. So essentially, if you do this right and you paper this right, I can have you getting profit from both sides. You got profit on a building that you own that's also getting paid off, and you're getting you're building up your equity in, and profit still from your gym. If you have an existing or a brand new location and it's profitable, getting profit from two things, pretty cool. That's really nice. That's what I did with that's what a lot of gym owners that we work with, when they buy a building, this is the biggest benefit to it. Okay. Now, traditional versus SBA loans. And this is for leases or buying, okay? If you're going to get a traditional loan to finance a location, I want you to understand that they're faster, they get done quickly, but they're expensive. You generally need to show up with 20 to 30% of the loan amount. And if you are a true concept, I've seen as high as 35%, like a startup concept where there's no existing proof of your success. It's all conceptual, it's speculative. All right. These are generally much shorter terms and they have a balloon payment. So you might get a 5-year term, like you got to pay this back in 5 years. And then there's a balloon payment. A balloon payment means all the rest of the money is due. Now, in practicality, that's not actually what happens. You go the 5 years and then you refinance the loan and you extend your term out. That's typically how that's going to go. All right. You just better hope that when it comes time to refinance, interest rates are not higher than when you signed. So anyone who bought a building, in, let's call it like 2015 to 2019, damn, good interest rates. Anyone who bought a building or a house or anything else after 2020, not so good interest rates. So if you remember, imagine having to refinance from a 2.6% loan to a 6.8. It's kind of fucked. A lot of people were in that position. SBA loans. So whether a 504 or the 7A all apply here. I'm doing the 504 because I think on this slide we were talking about buying the building, but you would use a 504 or 7A. And again, the loan officer, the SBA loan officer, will be the one to tell you which one. They're going to want to see a DSCR, that debt service coverage ratio, of around 1.2 to 1.25. And just so you understand debt service coverage ratio, for every $100,000 you borrow, if they want a 1.2 coverage ratio, that means you're able to generate $120,000. Right? Again, it's just that, remember I talked about that buffer, being able to keep your head above water. Okay. Nice thing with these SBA loans, you can go out generally out to 25 years on them, which obviously lowers your monthly payment. You'll have fixed rates, which again, depending on the interest climate of where we are at in the economy, that could be really, really nice. And if you guys got EIDL loans, if you were in a business prior and during COVID, right? Like 3.5%, I think 30 years, incredible, really, really good. Down payment is far less, 10% down, which is what helps small business owners. It leaves more cash for you for your operating capital. Okay. Now, debt service coverage ratio, I already talked about this, but essentially just don't really worry about mathing this right now. Just know that when you find the bank that you want to do business with, ask them what their debt service coverage ratio requirements are for SBA loans. That's the thing I want you to take away from this. Coming up with the down payment. So all this sounds good when you're financing a location until you have to come up with cash to give to the bank so they can give you more cash. And the simplest thing, you have to save money. It's like, I have so many people like, so where am I going to get the money? I'm like, well, have you saved? They're like, no. I'm like, do you have rich people who owe you favors? No. Do you play the lottery? We have to have money. Like the bank is just like those landlords. They're not even going to take you through the loan process if you don't have money or if you have personal consumer debt. If you're sitting there personally with credit card debt up to, 20, 30 grand, it's not time for you to buy a building. It's time for you to get some better financial hygiene. So it's very simple to play the game and be able to sit at a table when buying a building or getting a loan to lease a property and start a company. If you have not been taking care of yourself financially, your personal finances are in a wreck or your business finances are in a wreck, you will not be playing the game. And if you do, you're going to be doing it for some like hard money loan type scenario that has an insane interest rate and has your house as collateral, which you don't want. Okay. I have a breakthrough. I'm not gonna go through this because it'll chew up too much time. But I do this all. I give presentations on this, guys, and I was able to. I decided I wanted to buy commercial real estate when I opened up my gym, CrossFit South End in Charlotte, North Carolina. And within 5 years, I had enough cash ready to go to be able to go ahead and do that. I additionally went ahead and partnered with somebody who would go 50-50 with me. That way we could then get a bigger building and I would have more cash available for operating expenses. And I do believe I'm not a huge fan of having a partner in business, me personally, but I'm not against having partnerships in business. They can actually work really well. Some of the most wealthy gyms I work with have partners. But in a commercial real estate company, right, that commercial real estate holdings co, having a business partner is one of the easiest partnerships you'll ever have. There's no daily decisions. There's no programming conversations. There's none of that. It's just, it's a much simpler partnership because you guys make financial decisions early on and then you just kind of ride it out, having to make financial decisions intermittently. Which insurance care do we go with? When do we sell? Things like that. But go through it. Now you guys can get copies of this slide, but like go through this kind of breaks down a financial model and how you would put away over 5 years money. And it's very, very practical to make sure that you had enough cash to go ahead and purchase up to a $2.8 million building in this scenario. Okay. But I don't want to it will take forever to go through that. But what I would like to do, which we can do, and Zach, let me know if you think this would be helpful. I was going to go through and just do a version of how a gym owner could partner with somebody to either buy a building or finance a new project, a new location, a lease or whatever, and do so, even if it's very, very expensive, with zero money down.
I think that would be of great interest to a lot of people, actually. Okay. I've heard about that scenario a few times, and I think it needs to be talked about more. So yeah.
Well, that's cool. Let me go ahead and do my little technology thing and boop, boop, boop. Alrighty, kids.
Yeah, that's actually becoming more common, actually, with fitness and boutique gyms becoming more mainstream as the times progress and investors are looking to get into it and make that play. Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk shop. All right. So let's do the easier one. Let's say you wanted to go ahead and the goal here was to buy a building. Okay. We talked about pretty much there's two financing route, right? A traditional loan and an SBA loan. For recap, everybody, what is the average down payment for a traditional loan? It's generally going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30%. All right. For the SBA loan, it is a guaranteed 10%. So here we are. We have Mr. Gym owner, lots of ambition, has a good business, but unfortunately life has not been kind or he hasn't planned, and he doesn't have enough money saved up for a 10% down payment on a building. Okay. And then you have over here, everyone knows this, you've got this, cash partner. And a cash partner, and I talk to people, the cool thing about owning a gym, it's how it worked for me, and I'm sure many people, you get such this amazing Rolodex of humans that you get to meet and a great network. Generally 10% of your gym is actually probably in that top 1% of your market as far as earners and wealth goes. And they start going to your gym for a while and they're like, man, you're doing well here, man. You ever want to get a cup of coffee and talk business? Well, people who are wealthy and have a good diverse portfolio, they want to continue to have a diverse portfolio. One of the hardest things to get into is commercial real estate. Residential real estate, and this is no knock on all the Airbnb people. Anybody can fucking get into Airbnb or residential, real estate. And, before you know it, they could have 10, 20 doors that they own. It's no problem. The reward is really small. You don't make a lot of money on it, but you do it in volume. It can work out well. And the cost to get this to play isn't a lot of money. You could buy a $200,000 startup, fixer upper and get started with residential investment, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you guys ever read that book, right? Or you do short-term rentals. Commercial real estate is a much different game because to buy a property, you need a business to go in it. So you either buy a property and wait around to lease it out and then have to pay commissions on those leases, or you buy a property and you have a known tenant that you trust and know, go into it, instantly providing rent. So in this scenario, let's say the cash partner and the gym owner both had this dream of owning a building. They would both like to get into the commercial real estate market, okay? And this building for shits and gigs is going to be $1 million. Okay. Now that cash partner has cash. That's why he's the cash partner. He's wealthy. All right. If he wanted to get into that, he couldn't get an SBA loan. Why? Because he doesn't own a small business that can instantly operate it. So if he wanted to buy that $1 million building, he would likely maybe have to go ahead and cough up 20 to 30%. So if he wanted to, his down payment would have to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $300,000. Okay. That's a lot of liquidity gone. And he doesn't even have a tenant for it yet. However, there's you, Mr. Gym owner, and you've got the golden ticket because you can get an SBA loan because you own a small business. You can go ahead and get a 10% down payment, which would only be $100,000. Okay. Everyone tracking? So with our powers combined, remember that commercial real estate holdco I talked about? You guys create a company, right? Called Cash Partner and Gym Owner Real Estate Holdings LLC. Now you can get that SBA loan. So for this guy, even if you have $0, so do the math with me right here. If you have $0 to put into the down payment, but your golden ticket effectively saved him up to 100, because again, what's the difference between this and that? You are saving him between 100 and 200K. Okay. Is that not worth? Could you not present the argument? But hey, listen, I've got a golden ticket. I'll get you into the club, but I want to instantly vest. Let's say it was the 200K. I want to instantly vest. I want to have 20% equity in the building instantly. I don't think this individual is going to mind. You just saved him $200,000. It's $1 million building. Okay, sure. And there's probably altruistic reasons. He's probably down to help you out. So, maybe you guys come up with a number and it's 20%. And then you're like, well, Stu, I want to own more than 20%. I bet you do. So we'll start at 20 and then the SBA will require you to sign a 10-year lease. And you're going to say to your cash partner, every year that I successfully pay the mortgage plus, remember the 30% I talked about? Okay. Because it can't just be mortgage alone. You guys got property taxes. You're going to have issues. Remember with a mortgage, that's the least amount of money you pay each month because you own the shit. If stuff breaks, it's on you. When you lease, your rent is the most amount of money you pay each month because you generally aren't going to have to pay if the roof, starts leaking. It's going to be on the landlord. Okay. Assuming your lease is good. But so every year, let's say, hey, every year I do this, I want to add 3% equity every year that I successfully pay rent, and the additional, that's going to be profit. Guys, real quick math. At the end of 10 years, what is now your equity? 50%.
Hoping people say 50%. Yes, exactly.
Think about it though. But you're like, yeah, but Stu, the mortgage is, 5 and I'm paying 8. It's a lot of money. Cool. So let's say that. Let's say your P&I, principal and interest, equals $5,000 a month. Okay. And the profit margin that we're putting in there is an additional 3. That's how the math worked out. So 8 all in. When you pay eight each month, guys, if you ride this out for 10 years, how much are you actually paying? I'm going to wait.
Well, say the question again. I was yawning.
So I'm going to be I have this deal with my cash partner.
Oh,
At
okay.
the end of 10 years, we are 50-50. Every month I pay $8,000. Okay. How much am I actually paying?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So you're actually paying. Okay. So remember, the rent is what? The mortgage is 5. So that goes to the bank, correct?
Yeah.
And the profit is what we're doing in profit is 3, right?
Right.
Well, if
you get 50% of that profit.
So really, you're only paying an extra $1,500 more.
Right.
Because the way I would recommend you structure this is that the profit that goes in stays within the business in retained earnings. There can be early distributions for him if he insists on that, or you could, but otherwise you let it pull and pull and pull, and you guys would both have what we call preferred returns, right? Like you guys would each get your money out that you put in, but essentially every dollar you put in, as long as you wrote it out to the 10 years and you hit your 50% mark and you paid the rent on time every time, half of it's yours.
Yeah, this is a masterclass, Stu. This is a masterclass in how to retire as a gym owner.
So, like, if you guys go to YouTube, put in WTF Gym Talk, how I retired at 35 years old, this is how I did it. And I didn't even have to go to, I didn't even go to 10 years.
We need to set this up for every gym owner. This is how it should be done.
Yeah. So, but like, if you want, I didn't want to be a gym owner, and I'd already done a decade. I didn't want to do another one, right? Because here is the other thing, guys. When we are talking about this, and we are talking about exiting, especially if you own or, you know, whatever, if you own the building, you're looking to exit, these are really your options. I took scenario 1. I had my building and I had a number in my head, me and my partner, as to if someone offers us X to lease it, that's what we're doing. So when I can walk away and make, you know, let's call it 2.5 times more per month than what I would take out of my business for doing nothing for mailbox money, we're doing it. Right? So that's an option if you own the building. You put that into your SOA, your standard operating agreement with your partner. Or scenario 2, you sell the shit. Right? The only problem with you selling, you got to pay capital gains tax. And then you might want to do a 1031 exchange, which is roll that money into another project. It gets a little, so I never wanted to sell my property. Right? I'll leave that. That'll be my daughter's problem. Okay. I just want to collect the income every month. So, but yeah, like on the purchasing side, when you guys are looking at it, that is a way for you guys to go ahead and purchase. On the lease side, if you're looking for someone to help finance your startup, it's the same thing. However, your money that you're paying out to them, because let's say they were the bank, it's essentially just that you're not going to see 50% of that. It's the only difference. Like the model is very similar, right? Yep. Like, so I've got my rent if you lease the property, but I know I got to pay him back $3,000 every month because he loaned me $750,000. Okay, you're just not seeing 50% of that money back. You're literally, that is getting paid to you, but you didn't have any closing costs. You didn't have to get any credit checks. It was 1,000 times faster than a regular bank. The bank likes you, so he's not going to pull a note on, he's not going to call the note on you. So there's a lot of benefits to that whole thing. And I know we're about to come up to the end here, so I'm going to just kind of kill it here, just open up for some questions and stuff. But I hope that kind of gave everyone just kind of a really good overview on like financing commercial real estate, whether it's a lease or a purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. A phenomenal overview and kind of almost like a game plan for how to structure your business from the get-go with the end in mind. You know, it's a lot of people get into it for running a gym, that is, for the, like you said, the altruistic reasons of, you know, helping people become healthier and fitter and all of that. But if you don't have, you know, that finish line, that's not the best way to say it, but that end point, you know, it's
there's a lot of people in your gym, guys that would invest $100,000 to $200,000 to get the building bought, and then he just wants to hang out. He wants you to keep running the gym. He loves going.
Yeah.
Right. But he knows I put 200 in year 1. And we set it up that at the end of the 10-year lease, we can sell it, or we have a trigger that if we get an offer this high, I mean, it's a really it's great for both parties, depending
Absolutely.
on
It's
where
win-win.
their investment and their investment appetite sits.
Yep. Very cool. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. But there will be, upon exit, there will be a survey that pops up for you guys to answer a few questions about where you're at with either your current lease or your intentions on buying a building or expanding to a second location. And then it's also going to ask if you want to be mailed the slides, or if you want any of this supporting documentation. Stu, you have this stuff. Can we? You okay if we put it in a PushStart so that people can access there? Or
Yeah, exactly. Or guys, so if you, well, because I'll have to do individual. Yeah, so send it over here. So my team will just get you an individual link that'll be a read only.
perfect.
Um, and then that way you just copy and paste it over. But then we could get it. We could probably get a read only copy over there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So right there in the chat is stu@jimrealestate.co for anybody that wants to reach out and pick his brain and connect. He's been a tremendous resource for myself. I know I'm going through a very similar process, and he has laid it out very, very seamlessly, very, very easily, checklist style, which I love. It's been phenomenal. Can't say enough good things about that. But on the flip side, you're a phenomenal educator, Stu. So anybody that's just going to have questions is going to be able to hit you up.
Yep. Just know I'm probably going to send you a Loom video to walk you through it. It's just way easier than typing this stuff out. I'll probably have some kind of whiteboard breakdown or something like that. Yeah, way better, easier to answer questions that way. But guys, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to hit me up. Thank you so much for attending today. We appreciate your time. We know you're busy.
Real quick, Stu, do you have, are you able to help with Canada? Or in Canada? Don't help Canada. Canada doesn't
Correct.
need.
So I can't, we can do it on a consulting side. Here in the States, none of our clients pay us directly because we are compensated by the landlord or the seller. But in Canada, that doesn't fly. So we have to come in a strictly a consulting role, and then that is directly paid by the client.
Great question from Zachary. I'm assuming out of Canada. So that's great to know. Very cool, Stu. Thanks for coming out and educating us and getting all the information out there.
Absolutely, guys.
Really
thank you so much for coming. Appreciate
Everybody,
you.
thank you. We will see you next time. Yes. Bye.